Now, she says, now I'm allowed to start talking. So probably a year ago, I did a little video comparing snaffle bits to spade bits because I had overheard a conversation or saw one on the internet or something like that where people were confused about spade bits, and you know, it's real easy to look at them and go, oh my gosh, they're cruel and blah blah blah. And so I was just talking about severity and things like that within bits. And before I go any further, the severity is right here. This is where the severity is on any bit. It doesn't make any difference what that bit is. It's all in your hand. But bits work different, and they've got different actions, and they've got different ways that they signal the horse for things. And so I read a comment here just the other day on that old video, and somebody asked, hey, that's all cool and all, but could you do some compare and contrast on a bit that the average Joe is more likely to use? And I didn't even think of that when I did it, that like not everybody in the world is going to go to a spade bit. So yeah, so I'm just going to use some more average type bits. So here we've got a snaffle. That's just a run-of-the-mill regular snaffle. We're using it for a prop. You guys have all heard me say that I won't use anything that doesn't rust. This is Manel. Manel doesn't rust. That's my only exception. So right here we have also a bit made out of Manel. I don't remember exactly what you call this little guy. You see it in English writing more than anywhere else. I've used this bit a lot, and I like this bit. The way I use this bit, I just put my reins on the rings here, just like a snaffle, and so it really works just like a snaffle bit, other than the fact that it doesn't break in the middle. I don't get any use out of the leverage. I don't get any use really out of the tongue relief or anything like that. I've just got something that is not going to hold still. Something that is not going to collapse when I pull on it. And so I will actually use this on something that somebody else has run through the snaffle bit. And it's just purely so I can pull hard with both hands. Later on, if you're using this bit, English rider or anything like that, this is set up to where you can ride it with double reins. So you put the reins through here and you put another set of reins through here. Now you create some leverage. Now that short shank, that doesn't mean there's less leverage. Like people seem to think, well, long shanks means lots of leverage, short shanks means less leverage. The leverage ratio is the same no matter how long the shanks are. So that's basically a 2-to-1. So from here to here, that's about twice the distance there. So that's basically a 2-to-1, meaning if I put 1 ounce of pressure through the rein, I'm going to get 2 ounces of pressure at the bit. That's one of the things, but something a lot of people forget about when we're talking about leverage. Also, if this part has to rotate 2 inches to get 1 inch out of rotation here. And so that's how we determine the speed of the bit. So more leverage makes a slower bit, less leverage makes a faster bit. This is a pretty quick little bit. Like I said, this is something that an English rider would advance a horse, finish a horse with. I kind of use it for picking up the trash when I'm dealing with either my mistake or somebody else's mistake. Here's something a little more common for a Western rider. Tangle that up, Davis. That's just a grazer, just a run-of-the-mill grazer. This is a North and Judd. So it's old, and it is as run-of-the-mill as they get. These were mass-produced in the early 1900s. I particularly like these North and Judds because the steel they used was had a lot of carbon in it. It's not the cheap Chinese steel that you get nowadays, and so horses like the bit. But this is something that you would be more likely to advance a horse in if you're not going the snaffle bit, hackmore, 2-rein, spade bit route. You know, this is something you can ride about anything in. You can see that both of these shanks are bent out a little bit. That's not from me pulling on it. That's how they came. They came from the factory that way. So this is something now compared to our snaffle bit. Our snaffle is almost all on the cheeks, and I can put a little bit of bar pressure on depending on which side I'm pulling on, but that tongue's always there to protect that bar, so I can't put near as much bar pressure on. This nutcracker idea and the idea that there's palate pressure, you see a lot of people saying that about snaffle. That's spurious. I'm mostly just pulling on the cheeks, and I can put a little bit of bar pressure on, but it's always, the bars are always protected by the tongue. This has got a tiny little bit of tongue relief, really not very much, but that means the tongue, the relief, the tongue is going to go up into that area when I engage this bit, and right here, right where my thumbs are, that's going to put pressure on the bars of the mouth, the very, very sensitive bars of the mouth. So this is a bit that when I engage it has more authority to it, I guess you would say, than a snaffle. Another difference is this has a curb. Now we get some curb pressure when I engage this bit. The way this bit works, just the way it's measured out, and one of the reasons I like it so good. One of the reasons I like it so good is that you've really got to engage this bit like as far as it possibly goes before the curb actually engages their jaw at all. So I use this on a lot of young horses. But one of the things to think about with a curb bit is the reason it's called a curb is because it curbs the amount of pulling you can do. So once that engages, I can't pull anymore. I can continue pulling and I can pull as hard as I want, but it's not going to create any more pressure on any parts of the horse. Whereas with the snaffle, we've talked about this before. You can look back at old videos. I did some experiments with just dead pulling and used a saddle and stirrups so I could have leverage through my body and so on and so forth. And I can't remember what the number was, but it's like dang near 500 pounds I can dead pull. So that curb bit limits the amount of pressure I can put on. This has no limitations. This is the only limitation to how hard I can pull is how strong I am. So Arnold Schwarzenegger can pull harder than I can, but I can pull harder than my wife can. So curb limits that. Here's another pretty common bit you see in the world. That's a correction bit. Pretty sure Daryl Davis made that one. It's about wore out. So a lot of people have this idea that when you advance a horse, if you're not going in the Hackmore way and blah, 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 that you need to advance them. Yeah, there's a DD on that. He did make it. You've got to advance them into something that articulates. And then there's the age-old argument about what's a snaffle, and some people say, well, there's no such thing as a shank snaffle because a snaffle is a zero leverage, blah, 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 blah. To me, anything where there's movement in the mouth, if the mouth breaks, to me it's a snaffle. Argue with me if you want, that's just how I look at the world. So a lot of people think, well, you've got to go from the snaffle into something that articulates rather than to something that's solid jawed like that. I disagree. This bit has got a lot of stuff going on in it. For one, there's the tongue relief, so I can put tons and tons, and there's a lot of tongue relief in this one, and actually less than most of them you see, to be honest with you. But most of these correction bits have lots and lots of tongue relief. So I can put a lot of palate pressure right here. You see where those are big and they're flat, not palate pressure, bar pressure. I can put a lot of bar pressure on with this bit. Also, you may not be able to see in the camera, but the cannons here have some mullen in them, so it's set to sit in the horse like that, in the horse's mouth like that. So it's pretty well when the horse is just holding it calmly and the bit isn't engaged. It's pretty hair triggered. It's ready to go ahead and put that pressure on. It's wrapped around their jaw. And this actually does have that kind of nutcracker effect that some people talk about with a snaffle. This really can. You can, if you pull on both reins, you can really squeeze on that horse's jaw with it. Talk about the leverage there. You know, that's 4, 5 to 1. So this isn't a really fast bit, which is a good thing because there's a lot to this bit. You see a lot of them that don't have near that much sweep or near that much ratio, and that's what we tend to want to do. We want to advance our horse into something else, and we think, well, I'll just get this little short shanked little deal, and it articulates and everything, and my horse will really like it, and not think about the fact that, like, this is a lot of bit. The only reason I have this bit is for fixing major mistakes on older horses. I bought this when I was trading a lot of horses, and so I'd buy 7, 8 year olds and kind of put a little spit and polish on them. That's when I bought this bit. I use it for that, and I use it on wrangle horses, because when you're gathering horses on another horse, you kind of need to have a little authority in your hand there. So I don't use this bit very much, but that's why I got it, because there's a lot to this bit. Before I move on, I want to point out the chain curbs on these. Sometimes people will see these chain curbs and go, wow, it should only be a soft leather curb. There's a soft leather curb right there. Would you toss that to me? So, soft leather curb, chain curb. And so people see these chain curbs and they think, oh, the severity, the inhumanity, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's a lot wider than this is. And so what it actually does is it sits in that chin groove flat, and it just, the amount of pressure you put on in that curb, it sits in that chin groove and just spreads that pressure out and equalizes it. Yeah, you go to doing this, that's gonna hurt, but you ought not to be doing that anyway. So I like these chain curbs on these bits that have a lot more bite to them, because it kind of limits that pressure. Where this curb is real thin, it gets right in that little spot in their jaw. Brain fart. Gets right in there, and so all of the pressure that comes from this curb is really localized on those nerves. It's not spread out like it is with those wider ones. And yeah, you can get wide leather ones too, but that's just something about that. So there's a couple of bits there. If you're wanting to be a little more California, this is a more West Coast style of bit here. It's called 7. It's got a little roller there. A lot of bits that have the roller that sit right on the horse's tongue, horses don't like. I think because it just sits on their tongue and they can't get away from it. This bit, for whatever reason, everything loves this bit. So yeah, it's broken in the cheeks. It articulates a little bit. So it kind of lends a hand to where if your horse isn't quite straight up where you can neck rein around, you can squaw rein him with this, cheat a little bit. Got the roller, everything's flat here. There's no tongue relief, so I can't put hardly any bar pressure on. I only can put tongue pressure on. I can't put any palate pressure on at all. So this is just tongue in the curb. So this is a really, really mild bit. This is something that you use on a really nice horse, or if you're a little hard-handed, you might want to find something like this. But this is a lot milder than this, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. The last thing I was going to talk about here, and I don't have one of these because I just have no use for them. Not that they're bad, but I just don't have any use for them. There's a gazillion kinds of shank bits that have all kinds of things going on in the mouth, and they're broke. You know, the classic one is the shank snaffle, and so it's just snaffle with shanks on it. But you see other ones that have a chain link in there, or a ball in there, or Like there's an unlimited amount of stuff. To me, that's just a snaffle bit. So I don't even own one because I've got no use for one. But in terms of severity, all you're doing is adding some leverage. So you can get some curb pressure and slowing it down. You're adding some leverage, getting some curb pressure, and slowing it down from this. This is a light switch. It's on or it's off. If I'm not touching it, it's off. If I touch it, it's on. You get instant communication from this. Not necessarily great communication, but it's that fast. Where this is quite a bit slower. Talks louder, but it talks slower. So I hope that helped. Whoever it was that asked if I'd talk about some more realistic bits, because not everybody's going to the spade. And that's what we're doing. I guess before you turn that camera off, I'll roll this out one more time. This little bit, if I'm not doing the whole 9 yards and Hackmore 2-rein to California style bit, I go from the snaffle right straight to this. And several of them I did that today. This was the first time they had it on. And then I just ride them just like it's snaffle. And before long, they're riding around in this. So in my mind, rather than a shanked bit with all kinds of doohickeys and warblers and thingamajigs going on, to me, for the way I do things, this works better, to just use this. There we go. Thank you so much to the Patreon crew. You guys are the reason we're able to do this and do the extra things and really do all the YouTube videos too. We wouldn't be able to make it work without you guys. So thank you so much. And any of the rest of you, you can jump on and watch any of these extra kind of things that we do on Patreon and see what's going on there. So check that out if you can.